Hello, 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 and thank you for joining us on another episode of Popcorn for Breakfast with your wonderful, magnificent, fabulous co-host, Kirk.
Hello, hello.
I am your other co-host, Cam. And you know, it feels wrong, it feels wrong given the movie that we are reviewing today that this episode should start off with our music. It feels like it should start off with Kenny Loggins, you know? Highway to the danger zone. That's coursing through my veins right now because of that, and I really wish that we could do that. But because the law and copyrights and all those annoying things.
Yes.
We can't do it. But you know what? Whatever. It's their loss. It's the world's loss, really.
I guess we should have written a parody for Danger Zone, but is that even possible?
No, it's too good. I think that if you write a song that is so, like, if it is, like, such a banger that everybody loves it, you should automatically lose copyrights, and it just belongs to the people. Like, it just belongs to the community now. That's just, like, you get, like, I don't know, we all have to pitch in, like, GoFundMe something so that he gets compensated, but then now it's like it belongs, it's public domain.
Yeah, it passes the whatever the length of time, which is at least 100 years for public domain.
I think it's 100 years, yeah.
And then it just automatically just goes, nope, it's too good. It's everyone's. Congratulations. That'd be great. I think there was a vote.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be 100 years. It can be, it could be immediate. Like it's a banger. It's a certified banger. Yeah. 100 out of 100. Everybody owns it now. Sorry.
We should start a petition to get that into law that requires a petition to bypass public domain.
Yes.
So let's get that signature.
And the lesson there would be, if you want to own your own intellectual property, just don't write something that's incredible. Like,
right.
Just tone it back a little bit
then something would backfire and you write a terrible song. People hate it so much that they want that to be voted in.
Yeah, that's true. I'm just saying these are, I'm just spitballing here, but I just really feels like a shame that we couldn't start the episode that way. But I digress. If you hadn't guessed, the film we're reviewing this week is Top Gun Maverick. The sequel, I've heard people calling it a reboot. Heard people saying reboot, Top Gun. No, this is a sequel. This is what people are starting to refer to as a legacy sequel, meaning that it is a sequel to a film that was released like 20 or more years ago. In this case, it's 36 years.
That's right.
Since the release of the original Top Gun, which makes it one of the longest gaps in between original and sequel. I'm sure Candyman has to be in there somewhere. Well, Candyman, I guess, is a reboot. But it's hard to say.
That walks the line.
It does, because they have Tony Todd and they make references to the original Candyman, but yet it's called Candyman. I don't know. There's some tricky ones in there. Tron Legacy, which, by the way, was also directed by Joseph Kosinski, who directed this film.
Which also is incredible. Like, let's just lay that out there, guys. It's actually really good. Olivia Wilde is in it. Jeff Bridges reprises his role. It's underrated.
I think it was ahead of its time. It came out it was like 2009 or something. There were a bunch of other things that came out that year. The Daft Punk soundtrack. Oh my gosh. Underrated. But yeah, also directed by Joseph Kosinski. So he's directed two films that were legacy sequels. Tron Legacy was actually called Tron Legacy, which is funny. But yeah, so this is something that doesn't happen that often. I think Creed is probably the other example that people will point to. Also a great movie.
Also directed by
Joseph Kosinski. No, just kidding. He's only directed like 8 or 9 things total, and that's like including shorts and music videos and stuff like that. But he's got another film coming out this year called Spiderhead with Chris Hemsworth. It's releasing on, and I think Miles Teller's also in that film. It's releasing on Netflix. So if you enjoyed this movie, we'll tell you if we enjoyed this movie, and if you did, we can look forward to that film as well. But we're reviewing Top Gun Maverick, as I said, starring, of course, the incomparable Tom Cruise as reprising his role as Maverick, Pete Mitchell. And he is one of only 2 actors reprising their role in this film, the other being Val Kilmer, which was really cool. But without further ado, let's get into it here, Kirk. I feel like we're going to have a lot to talk about, so I'm excited, but also I'm anxious. I'm anxious to hear your thoughts. We saw it together. I should say that, first of all. We saw it together, which we don't always do. And I feel like the volume in our theater was too low. It was definitely too low for the trailers. And I said something to you about it, and we were kind of talking. We were like, listen, if it doesn't get louder, we're going to tell somebody, because this is a movie about fighter jets. So sound, it becomes very important, and it like enhances the experience. Yeah. But even though the volume went up, I still didn't feel like we got the full thump. I still felt like they were holding back a little bit.
Yeah, we did. Sound is critical in any film, but especially a movie like this. And you have, at the beginning of the film, they're doing the things that they're always doing now, where one of the lead actors, in this case, it was Tom Cruise, thanks you as the audience for coming out and seeing the movie in theaters. I still do not care either way that they do that, but it's whatever. And that volume was spiked, and I was like, great, we're fixed good. We're good. And we were duped. We were absolutely
duped. It was a trap. Yeah, it was a trap. They got us. Anyway, so we'll talk about if the sound factored into it, whatever. We're going to get into all the details, but first, we're going to start with a brief synopsis of this movie, because you might be thinking, 36 years later, what could the plot possibly be? Tom Cruise being the only returning cast member along with Val Kilmer. What could they possibly be diving into here? Well, I'm going to tell you. And as a reminder, our reviews are spoilerful unless otherwise stated. So there will be spoilers in here. So if you are afraid of spoilers, you can go see the movie first and then come back and listen. But if you're not, let's dive into it. So Top Gun Maverick, like I said, the sequel to the original film, Top Gun 1986, directed by Tony Scott. The plot here being that Pete Mitchell is still a member of the Navy as a pilot. He's still one of the top pilots in the entire Navy, and he's working on a flight program that is very close to being defunded in favor of an unmanned drone-led program. And so he's feeling like the art of the fighter pilot is dying. But he gets a call from Top Gun to the school of the elite fighter pilots to get called in and actually train a class of the most highly touted Top Gun graduates, recent graduates, to lead a manned mission that is one of the most dangerous ever. And they want him to do it because, first of all, the mission can only be done by real people because of the intensity of it, the parameters of the mission, and also because he is, like in the previous movie, he is a pilot who pushes the limits and who can do the impossible. He doesn't play by the rules. He's kind of a bad boy. He's going to push the envelope. And so they think he's the perfect guy for the job. It's actually Val Kilmer's character, Iceman, who is now a commander and the leader of the program, who calls him in specifically to do this. So he gets in there and he has to train this team to carry out a mission, but they're doing things that are like totally not by the book, like bringing the hard, what do they call that? The hard, what is it, Kirk? I'm losing my
words.
The hard deck. The hard deck, bringing the hard deck below 5,000, weaving in and out of canyons, pulling 10 Gs coming out of a pit so that they can do this mission. But his real focus is to get everybody out alive, which is something that the people who have set up the mission weren't really considering. And so he is working hard at it. There's tons of other factors that come into play. There's the fact that his former co-pilot, not his wingman. What do they call the people that sit in the back of the plane? I always forget the term that they use.
It's something like an engineer.
Yeah. But basically, Anthony Edwards' character, Goose,
yes,
his son is played by Miles Teller. It goes by the call sign Rooster, and so there is this tension with that. The fact that they reveal what the tension is later on in the film. There's the fact that, he doesn't feel like he's an instructor. He doesn't feel like he can lose people. He wants to be in the driver's seat. There's so many different things factoring into it, but that is the basic premise of Top Gun Maverick. And I didn't realize until I started talking about it that there is so much there. There's so much going on, but it all meshes together into a pretty good story.
Yeah, that's right. You're like thinking, well, this is like a fun airplane movie. No, it's much more. It's much more, ladies and gentlemen. It really is.
Yeah, I think this movie more so than the original.
Yes,
is a action movie. I really feel like it's more of like an action. I don't want to say war film because it doesn't follow the formula of a war film per se, but definitely leans heavier on the action movie side of things. Whereas Top Gun, the original, had some big fighter jet sequences, but was ultimately like just a very, it's so hard to categorize because it's just like such a quintessential like 80s vanity movie, like a synth rock
what a
vanity
great way. An 80s vanity movie.
Like that is really what it was. It was a little bit of romance, a little bit of action, but ultimately it's just kind of its own thing. Whereas this one seems to fall more in line with like your typical action film.
Yeah, in the first one you had the main goal, I think the super objective was to find the humility in Tom Cruise's character, to be like, I'm the best, I'm really great, I can do anything, let's go, I am a cowboy. And then it's like, no, like there's a lot more responsibility here, and he understands the responsibility in this one. And then you just throw everything else that he's still picking up for his past mistakes, which is really cool to see how that plays out. But on top of that, absolutely, there's so much high octane action in this that came out of left field, honestly. That was like a rush to the feet and to the stomach and to the head. I felt my hair blowing back in the film. It was crazy.
Yeah, definitely. So let's get into it. Let's start with our acting performances, as we always do. Our first category is going to be called "And the Oscar Goes To," which goes to the best actor in the film. For me, this one's a no-doubter. It's Tom Cruise. And they say that, Kirk, I know that you reference this a lot. They say that the age of the movie star is over. I say as long as Tom Cruise can get in front of a camera, it is not over, because the thing about this performance is it is the purest example of a pure movie star, Hollywood movie star energy that I have seen, and I don't even know how long. I mean, just totally commanding the role, commanding everything, and just exuding this otherworldly caliber of character and charisma and all of these things that have come to be associated with Tom Cruise. And he really does it in all of his recent films. It has been there. I think of the Mission Impossible films. It's like you watch it and you're like, it's kind of like, I don't know. I don't want to go too crazy and hyperbolous, but it's like watching Michael Jordan play basketball. Like you watch it and you're like, oh my gosh, this is greatness. This is a star, or LeBron James or whatever. That is the feeling you get with Tom Cruise. And I know that I always have to preface it with like, yeah, he's really tied into Scientology and things like that. But let's separate the actor from the person. We were having a conversation about that at the trivia night. This is one of those guys where you do that because the actor and what the actor represents is so important to film, and so next level. He's the last of a dying breed of movie stars, I guess. And his ability to step right back into this role of Pete Mitchell and yet bring it into the modern age was so impressive. He had really good awareness at every stage of the film as to what his emotional journey was, because there was an extensive one that he had to go on. In this movie, one of the biggest problems I've always had with the original Top Gun is how he deals with the death of Goose. I find it absolutely ridiculous. And I think it was just in a different age where like masculinity meant to not really show emotion. But I always find that like first scene in the bathroom with Viper after Goose dies, where he's like, Viper's like, Goose is dead. And he's like, I know. And he's like, how are you? And he's like, I'm okay. I just like, I hate that scene so much, because I'm like, your best friend, who you clearly were really close to, died in your arms when the plane that you were flying crashed. Like, that is a horrifically tragic and traumatic event. I want to see the full emotional journey, not just like, oh, I crashed my plane, my friend died, and now I have the yips and I can't fly anymore. And this movie goes so much farther into it. It's so clear. The ferocity and the intensity with which he protects his students from making these mistakes, and the way that he wants to protect Rooster because he feels like it's his goal and his duty to make sure that he does not die in some sort of horrible plane crash or flying accident. It is such a heartfelt touch to the character. And this performance goes well beyond that, but that's just one of the good examples of how he really takes this character on an emotional journey that we didn't get in the first film that we needed, and he gets the chance to fulfill it here. Really excellent stuff from Tom Cruise.
Indeed. Let's keep the love train going for Tom Cruise. That's my pick, and the Oscar goes to Mr. Thomas Cruise. I mean, your boy, he doesn't play when he's on screen. He doesn't play when he's on set, and we know all those stories as well. Like you said, he's one of the last movie giants keeping cinema rolling. Like when we talked about the Lost City, our last review, we talked about we had one of our former movie giants, right? Sandra Bullock, and she should have been playing her biggest plays here, and ultimately the writing fell short, and she fell a little short. Tom Cruise has yet to be, from memory, on any kind of a movie that went straight to streaming or streaming anytime recently soon.
Nope.
Or on a streaming TV show or anything since very long time ago. Or maybe he was on a TV sitcom briefly, but your boy is one of the last movie giants. There are about 4 to 5 critical scenes that you see him slay on screen. The first one, and these are out of order, the first one that comes to mind is when he is with Val Kilmer. Val Kilmer, of course, is in real life battling throat cancer, which I forgot when I saw this film. And I was like, wait a second, that's a little different. Why would they do that? And then it jogged my memory when I went back and checked his status, that the fact that your man is battling throat cancer and Val Kilmer and came to do this movie, and they reworked it so that it fit perfectly in with the storyline. Absolutely beautiful. That scene where basically Val's just listening and Tom is just pouring out his heart, and as he's speaking, he realizes his truth and what he needs to do next and what he's holding on to and what he really needs to let go of. The other 3 or 4 scenes we've got, every scene that he is with Miles Teller, there are 3 critical scenes. The first time that they are together is pretty big. The second time is when they crash land after the big shebang, the successful explosion and takedown of all of the plutonium or uranium, whichever it was. And they're in that forest and they're kind of like punching each other like, why did you save me? Oh, I saved you. And it's comical. And then there's this huge release as a life-altering moment of, I'm going to save your life. No, I'm going to save your life. And this realization of whatever kind of tension we have doesn't matter, because the ultimate realization is that they care deeply for each other's safety and deeply for the other person, no matter what the history was there. They've overcome it by this point. And then the third one is the very end where your boy Miles Teller says, it's what my father would have done. And the way that Tom Cruise hugs him, holy cow, like the rush of emotion you get. And the last one, and this might be the biggest one, the last scene that are the biggest hits for Tom in this movie. I call him Tom because him and I are on a first name basis.
Right. Yeah, no, I got that.
And it's when he gets called up and he's basically being interrogated before he officially gets the role as the instructor to lead the team, to teach this new recruit team. And there's this youthfulness just washes over his face when he's asked to come back to Top Gun. And of course, he thinks he's going to be team leader immediately in that moment, in that request. It's not the case, but the joy, the opportunity to redeem his past, all of that comes rushing into his face. I think we see it change colors. Like, it's an incredible small moment, but it is so monumental in the arc of his story in this film. And Tom, you nailed it, as you always do. Bravo.
Yeah, I think what they did with this character too, like Tom Cruise's performance, of course, elevates everything, but also the way that they wrote the character in this movie just fixes so many of the flaws that he had in the first movie, because it just adds so much dimension. And they go back and they do this sort of like revisionist history kind of thing without actually tweaking anything. They don't retcon anything. They just change the context of the way that he feels about things now that he's more mature, and he's not just like the hotshot fighter pilot, no regrets, all gas, no brakes kind of guy, because that really is a one-dimensional character. And this one is so layered and so multi-dimensional. And you need an actor like Tom Cruise who understands how to deliver that kind of stuff. I mean, he's still at the top of his game as far as I'm concerned, 58 years old. absolutely crushing it. So it all gelled so well. It was just like the perfect combination. Honestly, it was the perfect timing for this.
Indeed.
All right, moving along to Scene Stealer. This is the under the radar or not the top build. The unsung hero of the film. Who's it going to be? And oh my gosh, Kirk, I thought about cheating on this one so often. At one point today, I honestly said, as I was writing my notes, because I had about 4 or 5 candidates, to be honest with you, and I was like, what if I just said all of the Top Gun students? What if I said everyone in the class? I was like, I think I could make a compelling argument for that because they were all so great. But I have finally settled on one who I think was better than the rest, and that person is Glen Powell. Glen Powell, who plays Hangman. And the main reason I'm going with this is because you're not supposed to say is because, are you? You're just supposed to say is.
I think that's actually the best grammar.
I have no idea. I can't remember. It's been a long time since I've taken a writing class. But Glen Powell was in a role that allowed him, I don't want to just say that it was a perfect fit because I don't want to make it sound like he was typecast in the role. In a way, you could argue that, but this role allowed him the freedom to unlock things in his acting repertoire that I don't think he's been able to tap into in previous roles because he was so in line with this character and understood what this character could be at such a high level. And actually, if you read about the production of this movie, they wrote the character around him. So in a way, he wasn't typecast, but the role did kind of turn into him throughout the writing process because they were so impressed with what he was able to do during auditions. He was actually considered for the role of Rooster originally alongside Miles Teller, and they said, hey, man, we think you could do this role, and we're going to work together to kind of make it its own thing. But I think because they went through that process, it gave him the confidence to unleash things in his acting repertoire that he has not been able to tap into, and absolutely was a game changer for him. I feel like this is a career-defining performance for Glen Powell. I feel like this unlocks all sorts of possibilities for him because even if it's not the sort of villain-ish role, he basically is the Iceman of this film, right? Like he starts off as sort of the villain character. He's a host unto himself. He only wants to win. He abandons his wingman or woman. That's why he's called the Hangman, all this stuff. But then he turns into the adversary, or not the adversary, the advocate, the friend, the comrade by the end of the movie. But even if it's not roles like that, there is an energy that he can exude that will apply to so many different roles that I think is so impressive. It's something that's very unique to him. The scene that jumps out for him is when he's kind of getting after, he's figured out that Pete Mitchell, Tom Cruise, and Rooster's dad, Goose, were together in the program, and that, the whole history that goes on with there. And he starts in the middle of class just kind of poking at that seam because he realizes that Rooster is a threat to be team leader and he wants that role. And the way that he delivers all of those lines and the way that he expresses himself during that scene, all the way up to when Miles Teller finally snaps and comes after him, and the way that he just kind of like antagonizes him and jeers him is just pitch perfect all the way through. Never feels campy or corny. Always feels expertly performed, and it feels real and genuine. Like the animosity is so real, and you get super mad at him yourself while you're watching the movie, which is like A+, great job, Glen Powell. But he does so many other things in this movie. I really feel like this is the defining moment for him. He's been around for a little while, bouncing back and forth. He's had a couple of roles that you're like, I can see why he had this role, but it wasn't the best movie. This is the one. This is the one that takes him to the next level, Glen Powell.
Beautiful choice. This was such a difficult category. I almost went with Glen Powell myself, but then someone inched above that. And that answer is Mr. Miles Teller. Mr. Miles Teller. Like him, hate him, like him, hate him, hate him, then like him again. Miles Teller is kind of a roller coaster of a career. Came out swinging in his first couple of films that he was cast in. And then had some just kind of clunkers, sometimes performance, sometimes based on the script, sometimes the overall production. But your boy is back. He is trying really hard. I don't know if he changed agents or if he said, listen, I'm not going to do this anymore with these failures. And he is someone that I never in a million years would have thought that looked like he resembled neither Anthony Edwards nor Melanie Griffith. And here he is, looks like the perfect love child of them as he steps in with that incredible mustache and incredible physique that he came up with. Fun fact, Miles, Glen Powell, and wait for it, Nicholas Hoult were all in the final running for Rooster.
Yeah, which makes you go, film. Huh? That's things that make you go, what? Nicholas Hoult.
They were each flown out individually. They were the final three to Tom Cruise's home, which what an intimidating request and audition. And they were there to discover, as Tom Cruise is one of the executive producers on this film as well, of course, they were there to discover, is there enough chemistry between the two main characters? Because this is the crutch of the story right here. And Miles went out. Miles had to have studied Anthony Edwards like to the nth degree. As someone who has watched like 150 hours of Anthony Edwards footage, I can say confidently that I saw him trying to live up to and be like his dad. Anthony Edwards, ER, The Client, Top Gun. Recently, We Crashed. He is someone who is not the front man in a lot of things, but when you see him, he is always the heart, the moral compass of a film, and that's what Miles Teller throws into this role as well, just brilliantly. And there's a couple of very specific lines that there is some expert level study, not only in a reference to what the original character is, but a reference into the earnesty of those lines too. There's two lines in particular, and this sounds crazy, but there's two lines in particular after they land, after at the near the very end, and they land back on the whatever you call it, the helipad,
aircraft
whatever,
carrier.
The aircraft carrier. I'm really good at military.
Well, you
language.
bailed me out a few times tonight too, so it's one of those nights you just gotta strap in.
Thank you. And so they're hopping out. The door is lifting, and Tom Cruise asks him, "Are you good?" And he says, "Yeah, I'm good." And when he says that, immediately I'm like, wow, we should have done so much more with that. But which is a dumb, really actory thing to say. Like, yes, he should have shouted, "Yes, I'm good, Maverick." Something to that effect. But really what he's saying is, yeah, like he's exhausted. He's like, yeah. Like he's taking inventory. I'm good. And this is a very Anthony Edwards thing. And it's a very true characteristic of what this character would be as he's shown from beat one to the end. And he's had a little bit of humility in himself too, as when he struts into the bar at the very beginning with his dad's shirt essentially, and is ready to play. And then he kind of gets knocked down a little bit, but then he like gets back up, plays the piano, and corrals the crowd. And what he realizes is that his true self is not trying to be anybody else, but it's really just relishing in the fact that he can bring people together. That's what he clearly does in this film. And then the very last one, he says to Tom Cruise, to Maverick, if you will, he says, "It's what my dad would do." And this line should sound super cheesy, and it doesn't, because he means it with a fiery passion in his eyes. That final scene with what they're going to do. And then there's that big Tom Cruise hug. I would pay millions of dollars just for a big Tom Cruise bear hug. I just want to say that out loud in case Tom Cruise is listening, because it's got to be good. Have you ever had a really good bear hug for someone? You're like, yes, like you're so excited for them. And he gives it back. Miles Teller gives it back. And I think that the chemistry without those two loving one another so much, this movie would not have made it possible. Miles Teller, you rose to the bar. You threw out all of the other criticisms that I think sometimes affect your performances. And I think that you're on the right path. So bravo, you get the scene stealer for this one.
Yeah, I think I love it, because I mean, early in his career, I was one of the biggest Miles Teller stands ever. I mean, I was just like all over it. I wanted to be a part of everything he was in, and I feel like he's like the quintessential understated actor extraordinaire. Like the stuff that you're talking about, those are not like big, high energy, high emotion things that he's doing, but it's really nuanced, understated sorts of things. And I feel like where you saw the missteps in his career with things like Fantastic Four, I don't know. Wild Dogs for sure. War Dogs.
War Dogs.
Yeah. I don't want to say Divergent because that whole thing was a dumpster fire, but like it's those roles where it felt like he was pushing himself to kind of overact, to over deliver, to reach this different tier. He thought he had to do that. I don't want to like speculate and assume, but that's really what it looked like just from my seat. And I feel like the more recent roles that he's choosing, where he's starting to kind of revamp, is because he's back on his craft, doing the things that he did so well early on and not trying to push it too hard. He's still putting in as much, probably more effort than he was in those other performances, but he's embracing the nuance. He's embracing the micro expressions, the subtleties, the tonalities, the things that take people to the next level. And I think he's on a really good run. Hope he can sustain it, because when he's at the top of his game, oh my gosh, he's so good. He has potential to be so good.
Aubrey got to see this with us, and she said at the end of the night, she's like, what's the other movie I'm thinking that Miles Teller is from? And I said, Spectacular Now with Shailene Woodley. And she said, that's the one. He's really good in that one.
He's really good in that.
And he is. And he's like a real person in that movie. And this is a very real scenario. I feel like Top Gun, they made those characters real, but like you said, what was the verbiage you used? Like the 80s vanity lens.
Yeah.
It's so perfect. I just want to call that out again. The 80s vanity lens. This one was very much like you could plant this movie really at any time and you say, oh, wow, that's real. That's a real person I'm seeing right there. And when he sticks to that path, I think that's what's going to carry him to his next level, rather than, like you said, forcing it.
Yep. Come on, Miles Teller. We're all rooting for you, man. You can do it. You're showing flashes of greatness, and just go for it, man. Just be your best self. Live your best life. All right. Let's move on to the production. Oh my gosh. So many things to talk about. I tell you, trying to narrow it down to a showstopper when there's so much going on from a production perspective is really hard. And anyway, we'll have to talk about, if any of us leave something out, I might have to throw a couple of things in there that are worth noting, because the elephant in the room is like, there were real jets in this movie and like shooting inside of real jets. So if neither of us talks about that aspect of it, we'll have to go into it a little bit. But my showstopper was not the jets themselves, but actually the editing. And Top Gun was nominated for an Academy Award for editing back in 1986. And I feel like this movie has a really good shot at doing the same thing. Granted, it's early in the year, but I felt like the film editing in this was superb. I think the shots that they chose, the way that it was cut together, was really good. And I think, and this is partially a direction thing too, but there is this thing that they do in all of the scenes, and this happened in the original Top Gun. It's happened in thousands of movies throughout the course of all film history. But in those scenes in sort of like the classroom setting, and definitely the scenes where they're flying in the air, there is this, there's this kind of like crosstalk dialogue where each person is delivering a line that's like finishing the statement or adding something else. And if you do that wrong, it can sound extremely campy and corny and terrible. It can be like, I don't know, it can be like Power Rangers level corny, where it's like, we got to do this. Where it's
take
like,
that back right now.
Where it's like, what's Maverick doing? Oh, he's doing this, blah, blah, blah. You know, like it can be very cheesy, but the way that they edited it and the way that they got the right takes and then spliced it all together, all of those scenes that were the most cut up were actually the best scenes in the movie, which actually it feels like it's not the case for a lot of action movies. It's like, a lot of times in action movies, like the more cuts you get, the worse it is. And in this one, it felt like they were chopping things up just right to keep the energy up without it, falling into quality concerns or campiness or weirdness. So it's kind of hard to convey into words now that I try to do it, but I really felt like the editing was top notch. I loved the way that all the scenes when they were doing, particularly when they were trying to shoot down Maverick and Maverick was trying to shoot them down, those scenes were insanely well edited. And I know because they were using real jets, the amount of footage they had to have had, or the amount of takes and everything, had to have been insane. So the fact that they went until they got the exact right takes and then pieced that all together, those scenes were awesome. That very first scene where he's like, your first lesson, you have to shoot me down, right? And it's like they wager 200 push-ups. The way that scene is edited together, and it's probably about a 15-minute set piece, is perfect. It's like perfectly done. They cut to them, saying lines like, yeah, it should be us out there, but that's Goose for you. That's Rooster for you. That shows you who he is as a teammate. Cut right back into the sky. Cut to somebody doing push-ups. Like, it is phenomenally well done, and it made me so happy. I could feel the giddiness. I was like, oh, this is such good filmmaking. I'm really enjoying watching it. So for me, it has to be the editing.
I was distracted in that sequence because I can barely do 15 consecutive push-ups, and
dude, push-ups are hard, let's be honest.
I was like, 200 consecutive push-ups, they're gonna die. Their biceps will literally explode there on the asphalt. But I am not a fighter pilot, and nor do I pretend to be one.
Yeah, how else do you think they got in shape for that football scene? It was
football, rugby-esque.
Yeah. It was all those push-ups because they had to do so many takes. That's literally all they had to do, I bet.
That's it. They said, memorize your lines. You're going to do push-ups for the full, 3 months of shooting. You're going to fly in planes, and then we might throw you in some other scenes. Yep. Maybe. We'll see. My showstopper really does go to the planes. It really does. Specifically, it goes to, this is not fair, but it's back to Tom Cruise again. It goes to Tom Cruise's performance in a plane, which of course he's a pilot. He's an actual authorized licensed pilot. So of course he knows you're going to get the most out of him. He has the most flight time, right? A couple of quick things about this. As Cam said, they're all really in those planes. They're not really flying it. They were forbidden from flying those planes, especially Tom Cruise to not take the wheel. But they're all really in those planes. They're really taking on those G-forces. They had to do their own camera work. They had to set up their own shots with the camera because it's just them in the cockpit, and they had to do their own makeup touch-ups. So while they're in the plane, you're getting all these G's, your face is going everywhere. You might have tears pouring down your eyes for whatever scene, whether it's intentional or not. You might have slobber from your face. Who knows? They had to fix their hair, they fixed their makeup there in the cockpit, bring their footage down, and then take it. And then if it was wrong, they'd go right back up in the air. So crazy stuff. What I want to talk about specifically is when Tom Cruise rolls in against the rules, when John Hamm has been appointed as the new instructor, and Tom Cruise just hijacks that jet and rolls in and tries to do the mission to prove to them that it's possible, to prove to his students. It's the rocking back and forth for me, the left, the right, the left, the right, and the grunting. And as soon as it starts happening, you're like, what is he doing? And then you're thinking, oh my gosh, he's going to die in that plane. Wow, we're going to watch Tom Cruise die in this particular stunt, which is what you think every movie you see. And it goes left, and he's like, just these really authentic grunts that you would just normally do. He's not exaggerating them. He's not putting on a show. He's literally just flying that plane and like really just going for it. And I just thought the authenticity of that was incredible and just superbly engaging. I've never seen anything like that. When you see movies with jets, again, even if the actors are really in the planes and they're really being flown in them, I've never seen someone who would take a risk like that. It's not very flashy. Tom Cruise grunting authentically is not a very like, wow, that's handsome. It doesn't exude like what our ideas are of masculinity or whatever you want. But he's just like his body's like slamming against the side of the cockpit. It's like incredible. And I just thought that because it was such a long scene, we see the full 2.5 minutes like uncut of him just going left, right. I just thought that was just really, really incredible to see, and really was the heart of what perpetuated the rest of the film, which I had no idea that we would have so much action, and it really just gave us the first taste of it for the rest of the film.
Yeah, I mean, Definitely. There are so many scenes you can point to and so many different visual things that they did that as you were watching it, you're going, this is insane filmmaking because it's real. You know, I think anybody else does this movie or any other group of people does this movie and it's heavily green screened, heavily CGI'd, and who could blame them? I mean, the doing something like this has to be incredibly daunting. And, you know, they're flying, they've got military pilots flying military vehicles. You know, they're working with the Department of Defense Entertainment Division to get this film made. It's preposterous what they did in this movie, but because of it, the payoff, oh my gosh, the shots that you get in the plane, of the planes, the maneuvers they're doing, everything totally insane. And as you're watching it, you're going, this is nuts. Like, this is next level stuff, and this is something that I'm going to remember for a long time, and it just really sticks with you. And we did not see it in IMAX because there isn't an IMAX near us, but the whole thing is shot in IMAX. There's one across the river, and I'm going at my earliest convenience because I just feel like this is something that has to be seen in IMAX. The sound, the visuals, everything have to be so much more enhanced, and I want it because the visuals in the format that we saw it in were already insane, and I cannot imagine what it looks like in that format.
Absolutely.
All right, let's move into director's shoes. But the other thing I wanted to say about the planes, because I think people will hear, like, there was a lot of talk, and I got duped by this too, of people saying they're flying the planes prior to the movie coming out, and I was like, that is nuts. I cannot believe they're doing that, and I had a really hard time wrapping my head around it. Well, they're not, and so whenever people hear that they're not flying the planes, they still should not discount what happened, because you're talking about pulling insane G forces, 8 Gs, right? So like if you weigh 200 pounds, 8 Gs makes you weigh 1,600 pounds, right?
Oh my gosh.
In some instances, they're in planes pulling that stuff. That is hardcore. People were puking their guts out in these planes. And Tom Cruise personally wrote a month-long training program for these guys and was coaching them on it throughout the whole thing. This was intense. Like, this is not happening in normal filmmaking. So just because they weren't flying fighter jets, which now that I say it out loud is like, how did anyone believe that was the case? But I definitely got by that for sure. Even though they're not doing that, it's still an insane feat what they were able to pull off here.
Yeah, they might as well. Their hands weren't at the controls, but they experienced every other piece of it. They did the barrel rolls. They flew upside down. They flew sideways. They took every single aerial attack that was given to them.
Yeah,
and just had to go with the flow. To give you an example, the very first roller coaster I rode, the Mamba at World of Fun in Kansas City, has a 2G drop. It's the first drop. And man, that will blow your hair back for sure.
Yeah.
The fact that they're pulling 8 Gs, these actors who have before this never done anything like this. I mean, applause.
Yeah.
I mean, congratulations.
Yeah, seriously.
That's
it's
absolutely
insane.
A trophy for you all.
It's insane. All right, let's move into director's shoes and talk about things we would have changed or notes we would have had for this movie. My director's shoes is really simple. The whole Jennifer Connelly, Penny Benjamin thing is totally unnecessary. I feel like, first of all, for historical context, the original love interest in the first movie is played by Kelly McGillis. She is not recast in this movie, but they choose to go a route of giving Tom Cruise a love interest anyway, and going with a character who is mentioned in the first movie, like, oh, hey, remember when you had, were dating the Admiral's daughter, Penny Benjamin? But she's never seen in the movie. They cast Jennifer Connelly in a role of a character that was mentioned but was never seen in the original film, and try to build all this history between them. So that just at face value, that is weird. I feel like that is a weird choice to make. And as soon as she came on screen and they started that whole thing, like talking about Penny Benjamin, I had watched Top Gun 2 days prior to refresh. And so I was familiar with that, but I was like, man, what a strange decision that is to make, but I'm going to trust it. I'm going to see how it plays out throughout the whole thing. And I felt like the whole time it added nothing to the story. I felt like the main emotional epicenter of the movie was the rooster, goose, Maverick thing. And that whole thing, and it was enough. It was enough. Like, that was the only story that needed to be told. And I don't feel like Jennifer Connelly's character, no knock on her, I just don't feel like that character made any sense within the lens of the movie. And it frankly kind of sucks that, like, after you've had this awesome emotional high coming off of the completed mission, everything's done, whatever, you get to this final scene of, like, Tom Cruise working on his plane with Rooster, Miles Teller, and then it's like, for the final scene, let's show Penny Benjamin showing up, and I'm like, I don't care about this. Like, this is a total throw. I just do not care. I don't know why they needed this. I don't know why they thought they needed it. I don't know why they felt like he needed a love interest. I felt like the story of, like, the war-hardened Maverick was just so good and so rich and had so many layers to it on its own that I felt like throwing in a love interest and the fact that it's, like, super weird that it's not Kelly McGillis's character, it just distracted from it a lot. And I felt like it was just way overdone and totally unnecessary. But that's my take.
Yeah, I agree. I echo that. That's part of mine as well. I mean, it gives Jennifer Connelly such a disservice because she is actually an incredible actor.
Yes.
And here she is just fulfilling a role to motivate Tom Cruise's character, which, again, was not in the original film visually. It was strictly just by passing by expository dialogue. So I think it was a huge miss. And then my other item for my director's shoes is that there were all of these moments that, of course, had to, because it's a sequel, right? It had to pay homage to the original. And in the first quarter of that movie, they mostly did not work. It ties also heavily into Jennifer Connelly because you're like, wait a second, is she Kelly McGillis's character? No, that house looks just like hers, but it's not quite. But he does jump out of a window. I've seen that before. Like, there's all these allusions to it, but that is such a confusing piece to it. And he's saying hello to people that you didn't see in the past. Like, that was so strange. There's just a couple of items that work well. Obviously, the Val Kilmer scene works well as the only two returning characters, and of course, the montage of Tom Cruise looking back at his wall of Goose and his wall of Rooster and watching Rooster's success through the ranks. That part works really well, practically brings you to tears. But any other homage or callback to the original, it almost falls short. It's too forced because the biggest part of the story is about moving forward, coping with what's happened to you, making choices to rectify issues that you've done before, and live your life. Let go, as Val Kilmer, Iceman, says. So I think that those setbacks were really distracting the first quarter of the movie, but thank goodness it really just turned a corner and really skyrocketed to a new level.
Oh, good one. Yeah, I mean, I think that I was very surprised that specifically in the first half of the movie, they focused so much around that bar. And I'm like,
yeah,
guys, we don't care. Like, sure, there's a nostalgia factor for people who were around when the first movie came out and were a part of the hype wave. I was not, so I can't really speak to that. So I'm sure to those people, maybe that is part of the experience and they just feel that. And that's why Tom Cruise and Joseph Kosinski and Jerry Bruckheimer felt like this has to be in the movie. But I agree. I feel like anything that dealt with, like, the town,
yes.
you know, like Fighterland, yes, USA or whatever they call it. I can't remember. And the townies and everything, it's just totally unnecessary. And it felt like such a throwaway thing to give him a love interest in this movie instead of just, like, I think there is a way to reference back to the Kelly McGillis character, you know, and talk and address that and be like, okay, well, where is Charlie? You know, why isn't she in this movie? And there's a way to do that tactfully, but by doing the Jennifer Connelly, Penny Benjamin thing, you're, like, drawing all this unnecessary attention to it without addressing it. And then it's just, like, bizarre. It's a really bizarre thing. And it's such a weird drawback in a movie where everything else was so thoughtful. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so hot take alert coming here, but I did not grow up with the Top Gun movie because it came out before my time. That's not me being like, look how young I am. It's just like it generally, like I was not around for it. So I view that movie and I go, this is weird. Like the original Top Gun is weird. It's almost like it's like a 2-hour commercial for nothing. I don't know. Like it's like loud music, really intense, like romantic scenes with crazy music, really intense beach volleyball scene. Like there's all these really weird things, motorcycles and, fighter pilots and cars. Like there's all this stuff. It's just like,
and then
sensory overload.
Out of nowhere, they kill Anthony Edwards, like for real.
Yeah. And you're like, oh, we got real. And then it's like, no, we didn't get real. Tom Cruise doesn't really care that much about it. It is, and I'm oversimplifying it, but that movie is very flawed and has, in my opinion, not aged well at all. And I feel like if you weren't around at the time that movie came out, you could never appreciate it in the way that people do. It does have a legendary status because of what it represented in the mid-'80s, what it was. But to me, it's just kind of locked in that age. So what they did in this movie was call back to the things that were important and the stuff that they could do, like the intro sequence, including Danger Zone, including some of the music. They called back to some of that stuff, but a lot of the stuff that really holds that movie back and keeps it from being really good in comparison with modern cinema, they cut out. And they were really thoughtful about how they did it. But then there was all this like towny stuff that they should have cut out and they weren't really thoughtful about. And I was like, man, you were so thoughtful about everything else. Why, why make this mistake? Anyway, I'm kind of getting into my final thoughts and scores, so I'm just going to dive headlong into it. I think Top Gun Maverick, it way overachieves. I feel like I was surprised by how good of a sequel they were able to make out of this movie. And with these characters, I felt like the characters that, the character specifically of Pete Mitchell, Tom Cruise's character that was able to return, the way that they enhanced that character without making it feel disingenuous in comparison with the original character was so masterful. And it, like a good sequel should, it enhanced the first movie to where you can go back and watch that now. And some of the things that you look at and you go, that's kind of a flaw. He's kind of one-dimensional. It now makes sense with the context of the new movie, and that is really impressive. Obviously, the production and technical side of things is insane. What they were able to pull off with the real jets, the editing that was my showstopper, the acting of all the different supporting cast members, everybody that was in that Top Gun class getting trained. Also, something I didn't call out, the fact that Tom Cruise literally trained these people for how to fly made that relationship click in such a natural way, because it literally was like all of those people, when they're in the class looking up at him as a mentor, he really was a mentor to them. Like he was actually training them in real life. So that is next level. There are so many things that enhance this film and make it such an incredible watch. But the main thing and the simplest thing to take away is that this movie is just so freaking fun to watch. It is so fun. It is heart pounding. It is fast, but not too fast. They take extreme care. The story is really heartfelt and rich. The characters are excellent. Almost every single one of them. They build up to just an epic final third of the movie. Really cool stuff that they were able to do. And this movie feels totally necessary and really well done. So for me, I'm giving Top Gun Maverick a 9.0 out of 10, flat 9.0. I thought it was excellent. They were so close to having a perfect movie on their hands. I mean, so close, but because of the things that they did so well, like above and beyond what anybody else has been able to accomplish technologically, it helps forgive some of the sins that we mentioned in director's shoes. So 9.0 out of 10, Top Gun Maverick. That's my score.
Beautiful. Well, listen closely, ladies and gents, as I guide you into the danger zone of my final thoughts and reviews. Just keep going. I've got 3 minutes of talking, and I want you to do that the whole time.
By the end of it, I'm like,
Oh, and then we cut back to both of us and you're just out of picture, out of frame, just passed out.
Just dead.
This movie is fun. What a great way to put it. Because if aliens came down and said, I want you to tell me what happened in every decade, and you had to give them a movie, like this is the time capsule, you would give them for the 80s, Top Gun Maverick, St. Elmo's Fire, the Brat Pack movies. And you could do that with every genre. I feel that when we talk about movies that we're nostalgic against as millennials, we are like, oh man, I really love that DCOM movie, Alley Cat Strike. What a banger. It was so good. Or Brink or whatever it might be. And you're like, but I know it's like not actually good, but it's really fun, right? And that's what I feel like when some people, not all, when some people watched the original Maverick, I think it just like locked it in for them. They said, there's no greater film. I mean, you have the motorcycles, you have the jets, you have the volleyball. So we have to rearrange our expectations. Like, do those things make a movie bad? Absolutely not. But does it make it a great film? That's subjective, and that's why this is always so much fun. But does it make me criticize you for liking that movie? No, have fun with it, unless it's a really bad movie like The Kitchen. Have you guys seen that? We've reviewed it a long time ago. I just want to throw that under the bus anytime I can. But this one, truly fun, truly insightful, truly a well done, well constructed film, bringing back characters that everyone loves and bringing it to a new generation. Lots of young people in our theater, sometimes too young. We saw some like 4-year-olds in the theater.
Weird.
Maybe too young for a PG-13 movie at 9:30 at night on a Wednesday. So I just want to say that thank you, Tom Cruise, for bringing this back to life. Thank you, Joseph Kosinski, which sounds a lot like John Krasinski. You got to change your name. I think this will stand the test of time throughout any decade. 8.4 out of 10 kernels for me.
It's so good that it gets a new score that was just invented somewhere. Yes. In 8.4 is like a new tier.
I was thinking of Claire Foy, and I was like, would she like this movie? 8.4, yes.
Yeah. I am surprised. I felt like you were going to go, I thought you were going to go straight to the moon with this one. So maybe I don't know you as well as I thought I did, but I'm pleasantly surprised.
Did you wait straight to the moon? Like you thought I was going to give it like way up there, like 10 out of 10?
No, not a 10, but I thought I was guessing 9.5. I was guessing 9.5. I was.
Yeah. My score is heavily influenced on how much I was just absolutely bored in those opening scenes at the bar.
Yeah,
and
that's fair.
Like you said, lots of time at the bar, long, open, empty noise scenes. Like, I'm going to talk. Pause.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk. Pause. That stuff drives me crazy unless there's a real built up tension with the characters, which in this case it wasn't.
There wasn't. Yeah.
I originally was going to give it a lower score. And,
wow. I think it's fair. It is one of those things where it's like the lows are low and the highs are really, really high, so it's so hard to balance. It's almost better when it's like the highs are really high and the lows are like, there are some blips, or the other way around where the lows are like crazy low and it's like, eh.
But those high octane scenes were
gosh.
It's not just the fact that it was just really well shot action. It was the whole production all together, all parts of it. It came together, and it didn't seem forced when all those pieces came together. The story just really built up to it and played out, and it delivered. Yeah.
Do you get what I'm talking about when I say like they're taking turns saying lines and like each person is delivering like one line, and it's usually like all the little student pilots like each giving a take on something. I don't know how they were able to do that where it felt just the right amount of campy for the genre, but not too much. It was so well balanced to where it was like, it got you excited because you're like, oh yeah, this is good action movie stuff right now. Like this is peak. It's hard to explain.
I think it does come back to the editing, because I think 80s editing, they would say their line, kind of shake their head.
Yes. That's what I was trying to say.
And like stay on that character, and every character would get a reaction to the jab, the joke that they got. But in this one, it was like, I'm saying my line, and we're cutting to the
we're
next
getting
person.
out of there. Yes. That's exactly what it is. And that's why I was like, well, that's more of a director thing, but it is. It's the editing. I feel like that's how it all comes together. So
it's
we'll
the bend
see.
and snap. It's the Legally Blonde bend and snap, and just get out of there.
Get out of there. I will be interested to see what the awards reaction is for this movie, because I feel like it will garner some technical achievement awards, almost certainly. I mean, you could argue cinematography just for what they were able to do with cameras in those cockpits, but there is a lot there, and I wonder if it's a dark horse. I really do feel that. Like, I wonder, depending on how the rest of the slate, and I know that it, on paper, is a very competitive year for awards, but I just wonder what it's going to look like when it all comes down. I would not be surprised to see it show up, certainly in the technical categories, but maybe, I don't know, maybe direction, maybe, there's a chance that it could really make a splash. So we'll see how it goes. But that's our review of Top Gun Maverick. Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't seen the movie, encourage you to do it. At the very least, like, really good summer movie. I mean, oh my gosh, we saw it on a Tuesday night. Summer break is in full swing. All the high school students are there. It felt like a summer movie. It had all the right things for that. Just great vibes, good popcorn movie, loud, fun, funny throughout. So at the very least, make sure you go check it out for that. And we have much more summer movie content coming your way. Jurassic World. We've got Lightyear. I mean, there's tons of huge things that are coming down the pike. We're very excited about.
Indeed. And it's not for certain yet, folks, but there might be a special episode, a special bonus episode of Top Gun with a special guest. That's right. We might have a special guest in a special guest chair.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
And it might be Tom Cruise. I'm not saying that it is. I'm saying it might be. It could be.
He
Tom
invited
Cruise.
us to his house as well, like he did with Miles and Glenn.
Yes.
And we will be filming at Tom Cruise's mansion. Yes.
Well, wait, you let the cat out of the bag, Kirk, but here we are.
I shouldn't have.
But I will say that for next week, we are hoping that our review will be of Jurassic World Dominion. We are trying to secure tickets or passes to an advanced screening of that. If that's the case, we'll do the review. We'll do it spoiler free so that you guys know going into it what our thoughts were, just like the old days, kicking it old school. That is our goal, but we'll keep you posted if that comes together or not. And if not, we'll find something else to review. Who knows?
Right. 2022 is the year of surprises from Kirk and Cam.
It definitely is.
We're just going to keep switching it up.
We're just leaning into it. I like it.
You don't know what we're going to do next.
We don't know what we're going to do next. That's what I like.
That's right.
Anyway, thanks for sticking with us on all that. Thank you for listening to this review. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, whatever you need to do to help be a part of the community. We want you to be a part. We want to talk to you about these movies. We're always around. Best way to reach us is on Discord or also, Facebook comment sections. We're on there every day checking in. Let us know. Hit us up. We want to talk, want to hear your thoughts on Top Gun Maverick and anything else you've seen recently, new or old. But until next time, want to give a special thanks to our executive producer, Ryan Spriggs, as well as the band Rhetoric, who created our original music. Catch them on Apple Music, Spotify, Google Play, wherever you get your music. And we will talk to you guys next week.
Talk to you then.